Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Thursday, March 9th, 2023, and today I'm reviewing selected stories from an anthology called Everything's Eventual by Stephen King. As always, you can find all of the shows, along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions, or topic suggestions, or stories of paranormal experiences. Whether they're your own or from others that you trust, happy to either read them or have you join me on the show and talk about them. So, as I said in the start here, I'm going to be reviewing some of the stories from this book, this anthology. It's called Everything's Eventual. I was looking at the file that I put in the chat here, and it does look like some of these stories came from different points in time, but I encountered them first in this format of this book. So, I have 5 stories that I chose because of the paranormal aspects to them that I thought would be interesting to talk about. I will get through at least 2 of them today, and then we'll see how many. I have 5 total, so I was thinking of trying to get them all done in one show, but that's a lot of reading. So, but I'll at least get through the first 2 stories I had in mind today, and then we'll just make this a 2-part thing and talk about this again next week. So, as always, I always like to say a couple things. There will be spoilers, but also this is just a basic review and discussion of the paranormal aspects of the stories, so there will be a lot of details that I do not get to, just because of the format of this show. Also, these are horror and fantasy stories, so yeah, they will be dark. It even says so in the title, the subtitle of the story. It says Everything's Eventual, 14 Dark Tales, and some are darker than others, but there's definitely some in there. So just wanted to put all that out there before I start. Thank you all for listening. As always, though, I like to do that because I really appreciate that. All the support, all the downloads, and the views, both on the podcast and the YouTube feeds. And then also, I'm always glad that you were able to listen to the live shows whenever you were able to do so, because I don't ever expect you to. So, but I think that's everything for now. Also, just a quick reminder, I am back to 5 days a week, so there won't be shows the next 2 days, but then we'll start again on Saturday night, Sunday morning. So, all right, so I think that's everything. And now I can get to these stories. Now, this first one here, these first 2 are actually novellas, which are short novels, sort of. And this first one I'm going to talk about today is actually takes place in the Dark Tower, sort of in that realm of stories. But this story takes place before the books. Really before the start of the first book in the Dark Tower series. Of course, those books, I just realized they jump around in points in time. But basically, the important thing to note is that in this short story, the main character, Roland, the gunslinger, he's on his own. He doesn't have any of the other characters that you may have heard about or read about if you either read the books or listened to any of my review shows that I did on the Dark Tower series a little while back. So he's on his own here in this story, other than his mule, which he starts off with. So, and of course, just a quick brief or summary of Roland. He is he's basically a almost, you could say he's a knight, or He's an important figure within his own community, which is mostly broken down now. He's on a quest to find this Dark Tower, which is the uh, supposedly the center of all of reality, and which reality is breaking down. And he believes, and his family and everyone believe that if you could get to the Dark Tower, you could figure out why reality is breaking down and maybe fix it. So his only real goal is to reach the Dark Tower, but it is a long journey. Again, the whole Dark Tower series of books is seven books. So, but this is at a point again. So he's not quite in the very beginning of his journey, but he's again he's a little ways into it. And so he comes across this town, the remains of this town, really. And so he is on a mule, but the mule is basically not doing well, and it forces him to slow down when he reaches this town, and or village, which is he finds out the name of the village is Eluria, and this story is called, and I forgot to mention that. I don't know why. The title of the story is The Little Sisters of Eluria. And so he finds this town called Eluria. And so when he gets there, he finds this feral dog that has a cross-shaped spot in its fur, on its stomach, basically. So a patch of, I believe it was lighter fur, on whereas the rest of its fur was dark. But it's attempting to eat to eat a part of a dead body that is near there, near where he enters the town. And so Roland scares it off using one of his guns. Of course, he doesn't aim at the dog; he just aims near, which he is an expert marksman, so he can easily shoot wherever he wants to without ever even fearing hitting the dog. And when he goes to investigate the body, he finds this rectangular medallion, and so he wants to he takes this medallion off of this body, hoping that he'll be able to find the owner, or not the owner, the family that the body and the medallion belong to, sort of to give them all basically peace, closure. So as soon as he takes this medallion, he is attacked by this group of they're called slow mutants. They're almost like zombies in a way, but they have a little more intelligence than that. They sort of have the physical attributes of zombies in that they're very slow moving physically, but they do have some intelligence. But it's a whole group of them that attacks him, and so he is knocked unconscious, knocked out cold, and when he wakes up, he finds that he can't move. He is basically in a sling that has his whole body wrapped in it, and he's being healed somehow, but he doesn't know how. But once he wakes up, he encounters these people, these women that show up, and their faces sort of flicker when he looks at them, from between appearing to be old and young. And and they are the ones that are apparently nursing him back to health. And they do this somehow with these let's see here. I skipped part of the summary here. So yeah, let me see here. Let me make sure. Just go. Okay, so yeah, see, when he wakes up, he finds he himself in a hospital room, basically run by this strange group of nuns that call themselves the Little Sisters. And what they do is they use tiny bug-like creatures that they call doctors to heal the wounds of people that end up in this hospital, including Roland. And while Roland is there, he's watching them and everything and talking with them. And turns out that these are basically vampires, or at least his world's version of them. And what they do is they bring stray survivors of encounters just with these creatures, these zombie-like creatures, back to the hospital. And they use these bug creatures somehow to heal the people that they find. But and what they do, because they're vampires, is once the person is healed, they they kill them by drinking their blood. He actually sees when he gets there that there are a couple of other people in there, but every day, because he's there for several days, over time, first the people start to slowly vanish, and he doesn't know why. So until he figures it out, because he hears these creatures at night basically enter the room, and he hears them having their meal, which is one of the patients. So in the bed next to him, there is another younger man, and it's apparently the brother of the guy that Roland had found deceased in the town. And the amulets that that Roland has that he got from the deceased brother is the same as what he finds on the living brother. That's how he figures out that they're maybe related, and then their physical appearance. And so, but these sisters, they want to know who Roland is, and he and then this other guy whose name is I believe it was John, but they kind of quickly try to hide the fact that Roland is a gunslinger by saying that Roland is John's brother. Might even be James. Might even be the name of the guy that was dead. Actually, now I think about it. But so these two, Roland and this other guy, this brother of the deceased man that Roland found in the village, are slowly being nursed back to health. They're also taking in food, and so, but they find that there is some kind of a drug in the food that keeps them sort of sedate and paralyzed. And most of the sisters appear to be willing and don't have any problem with what they're doing to anyone who they encounter. Basically, they don't mind using people as lunch or as meals. But there's one that was one of the sisters that apparently was forced into this life. Her name is Sister Jenna, and she had involuntarily joined the others and wants to leave them. And so she actually gives Roland this herb, sneaks it to him basically, that will counteract the drug that the other sisters are giving him. And so eventually, and also the medallions. The medallions apparently prevent these sisters from getting too close to Roland or the brother. And so the sisters at one point try to convince or to trade with one of these they're called slow mutants, but they're almost like zombies. Try to get one of these zombies to take the medallions the medallions off of Roland and John. And this creature does take the one off of um, John, but then kills John because he doesn't trust the sisters. And so all the sisters have to rush in, excuse me, and basically feed on on John because he's been cut by this zombie. And so that's when Roland knows for sure that these medallions are somewhat keeping this medallion is somewhat keeping him safe. And so, and of course, after killing John, this zombie gets out of there as the sisters go to feed on John. So the the other sisters, including Sister Mary, who is the leader of this group, start to notice that Jenna is getting closer to Roland, and so they try to prevent the two from ever really meeting much. So meanwhile, Roland is slowly taking this they're like reeds. He takes a bite off of these reeds, and every day, and eventually, with help from Jenna, he's able to escape. Because basically what happens is he is caught using this herb, and by one of the other sisters. Now they all wear these robes and hoods, and on the hoods they wear these strings of bells that are what they use somehow to connect with and control the bugs. So Jenna actually has the bugs turn on the one sister that finds Roland is almost ready to escape, and so they do escape the hospital, and of course they're confronted by the other sisters, who Jenna wards them off with the threat of using the bells and having the bugs come after them. But of course they almost get ready to leave this area with this hospital in it, and Mary, the elder sister, the most powerful one, shows up in front of them, and Jenna tries to use her bells on the bugs to call them to help and to attack Mary, but they're too far away from where the bugs are at. The bugs are mainly stuck inside the hospital. It's just too far for them to go, even though there are a ton of them there. And so it looks like, and so Roland tries to, because he has his guns back. Jenna was able to get his guns, and he gets ready to shoot at Mary, but because these creatures are somewhat they're sort of how do you call it? They can be physical or non-physical. They sort of can alternate between those two states at will. And they also have sort of different magic that can make mechanical things misfire or malfunction. And of course, this is a thing that happens in some of the other Dark Tower stories. And so, and the most amazing thing about the story, in a way, is that this dog from the very beginning of the story shows up somehow. I don't know if it's drawn by all the noise or what, but shows up and automatically takes a disliking to Sister Mary and attacks her, and that gives Roland and Jenna the chance to flee the area. So Now the thing is, though, Jenna is actually um, one of these sisters, even though she didn't want to be, and so she technically has to eat or to consume blood to live. But of course, she is not like the other sisters, and she refuses to do that ever again. And so because these beings are somewhat their physical state is tied to the consumption of blood, she actually um, sort of falls apart or disintegrates um, after she and Roland have escaped. She actually starts to break apart and disintegrate while he's asleep, and he wakes up to find that she's gone. Um, so yeah, it's a really amazing story, just in the suspense of how Roland is going to get out of there, given all the drugs and the sling and everything, and so Roland, of course, who had already fallen in love with Jenna, is of course, heartbroken, which is not the first or the last time that will happen in the Dark Tower stories, but continues on, and that's where the story ends. So it's a good story. There's a lot more details in there, as I always say, than I was able to fit in. Yeah, it's and it's one of that aspect. Matt in the chat here says the dog comes back and saves the day. The question is, what does it have power because it's born with this symbol on its, like, as part of its own being, this cross symbol? Is that what prevented these creatures from fighting back against it? Or is it just because Mary was caught by surprise? The story is very very vague with that, and really, I think it's because it doesn't make it clear what the reason is for these things to happen. It sort of leaves it to the reader to think about that, or maybe, I guess, if they want to decide on their own, they can. So yeah, it's an amazing story. I definitely recommend it, and it's a neat little look back into the whole Dark Tower world, which is very much a fantasy. In most parts of the story, it's a fantasy story. There's some sci-fi bits in the main books, but very much a fantasy story, I guess, really, even though it does involve other genres in it as well. So that's it for that one. Let me see here. So yeah, I think I will review this next story. The funny thing is about these two stories is they're both connected. The one I just covered, and this next one, which is the title story to this book, Everything's Eventual. And this one is also sort of, it's directly tied to the Dark Tower series, and I think what I'll do is I will explain why once we get there. So let me get back to the file here, or the summary here, and close the other one down. All right, that looks good. And okay, so yes, this is Everything's Eventual. This is the novella that's within the book with the same title. So the story is focused on the narrator, who is his name is Richard, and the nickname Dinky, Dinky Earnshaw, who is a 19-year-old high school dropout. Starts the story by saying he has a good job, where he gets his own house, car, and almost anything he asks for, including CDs that haven't been released yet, which I think is a small hint at the larger universe, the larger Stephen King universe. Says that he also gets a small weekly cash allowance, but one of the rules in this job, and I'll explain what the job is when I get there, is that every week he has to, he can't have any. He basically is not allowed to save any of the cash. He always has to either use it or get rid of it. And so he but he has this job, and it involves this ability that he has. He has this he can basically mentally influence people by drawing designs and or pictures and or words. He doesn't really understand how it works, but he starts figuring out this ability even as a little kid. The first time he used it was to actually kill some bugs that were bothering him on this window inside his house. He drew some kind of a symbol in the dust on the window, and these bugs, I can't remember if it was one or all of them, but at least one of them dropped dead. So somehow made a connection with these things through drawing the symbol. Sometime later, as a kid still, there was this dog that would torment him and any other kid that walked down the street on his way home from school. It was basically barely tied up in this yard, and there was a short little fence, and so that he and other kids were always afraid that it was going to just break away from that rope, because it was just a rope. It wasn't even a chain, apparently. And I don't really advocate for any kind of mistreatment of any animals, but but in the story, he sort of half doesn't know exactly what he's doing or how he's doing it, but he makes this symbol out of chalk on the sidewalk nearby that basically drives the dog crazy, and ends up leading to its death. Now, keep in mind, this is one kid's perception of this dog, which he is pretty sure is going to escape and kill him. Not that it's a justification, but again, it's a story. So fast forwards to years later, he's a teenager, and he works in this grocery store, and there is this other guy around his age that is just constantly humiliating and even in some cases hurting him while he's on the job. And so this is, in the story, it mentions that this is where Earnshaw uses his power for the first time, knowing what he's doing, to drive this other guy, his name is Skipper, insane, which leads to his death as well. So not long after this, maybe a year or so, two after this, Earnshaw is discovered by a man named Mr. Sharpton. And this guy claims to work for an organization that searches across the world for people with abilities, with sort of psychic or unusual abilities. And this is sort of connects to the whole Dark Tower story, in that in many of the worlds, because in Stephen King's sort of his stories is fictional. It's really a fictional multiverse. There is, of course, this being known as the Crimson King. This is just a little bit of backstory to this, that wants to tear down the beams, which are sort of like pillars, except they're horizontal. These beams that hold up all of reality, and there are these people that he wants to find that he knows could use their mind to destroy these beams, and they're called breakers. And so it doesn't really say in the story directly, but if you read the Dark Tower series, it's sort of, you start to get the feeling that this is one of these. This is sort of Earnshaw's World's version of this one of these companies that is trying to find these kinds of people. And what they do to test out the person's abilities, at least to start with, is they hire people such as Earnshaw to carry out missions for them. And what Earnshaw is hired to do is to use his power, to eliminate what he is told are dangerous people. And the story mentions the skippers of the world, the people that are just doing terrible things. But of course, this is a huge corporation, so how they do it is through a computer, and also through some possible programming, some mind control or programming that they subject Earnshaw to in a laboratory, which of course is obviously not public. He doesn't get to he goes to this lab complex, and he doesn't get to leave it until he goes to this house where he ends up staying. And so his job is basically to, whenever he starts getting this feeling, which a lot of times happens while he's asleep, he goes to this computer and looks up, basically uses the internet to find the person that he is somehow being drawn to or directed to. And then he sends them an email containing his own special string of symbols and shapes and a word or two that are specific to that person that will then drive them insane, which will then lead to them to them dying. And so that's what his job is as he's staying in this house. And he also does. He sends for some targets. He actually does send out letters to people directly through the physical mail as well. But let me get back to the summary here. I don't want to skip anything. Okay, so for a while Earnshaw's thinking that he's basically hasn't made in this new job. But one day he finds an article in a newspaper about one of the people that he has killed, who appears to be an innocent old newspaper columnist. And he starts looking into some of the people, including this guy that he has killed. Of course, not through any method that anyone else would ever be able to figure out on their own, but still he starts to feel guilty for this. And he realizes that the organization has been using him to assassinate political dissidents and alternative thinkers. So this idea that somehow this master manipulator cosmic being has control of his world and who knows how many other worlds, political and military systems already, and is using people like Earnshaw to kill off people that go against him. So of course the story I don't even think it mentions the Crimson King. It sort of mentions more just the whole one branch of this system that works for him, which is part of the amazing thing about the story. You get to see how it's connected to the Dark Tower stories, but without it really mentioning even the Dark. I don't think it even mentions the Dark Tower, but And so eventually, Earnshaw is trying to figure out what to do, and he starts planning his escape. But what he's going to do, he mentions in the end of the story, is he's going to send one final email to Mr. Sharpton, the guy that recruited him, with a special symbol attached to it. So the idea is he will be killing off the guy that got him into the whole mess. So, and that's where the story ends. Now, just a quick note, Earnshaw appears in the Dark Tower book 7, The Dark Tower. That's also the book name as well as the series name in that case. As one of these people in this city of breakers, of psychic people that are working to break the beams that hold the ball of reality. Even though they don't really want to, they're being somewhat forced to through basically being kept under lock and key and just given almost whatever else they want, really. So yeah, it's a starts out as sort of a distant connection to the Dark Tower series that eventually leads the main character from this story, this novella, into the Dark Tower, the last Dark Tower book. So, and this is part of what is always amazing to me about King, is how he has managed to connect so many of his stories and books. So yeah, so that's that story right there. And I think I have time to review one more story here. Let me just see here. Yeah, but if I do that, then I'll only have 2 stories left for next time. I think that's where we're going to stop for today. Just because otherwise, if I do that, then the next review show would be like maybe a 10 or 15 minute show. So, and I don't really want to do that. So that's it for these stories for today. I have 3 more stories from this book I will review next time. But yeah, I really if you're ever looking for just a whole universe of connected books and stories, definitely check out Stephen King. I believe there's even, if you wanted to look up online now at this point, you could probably find like reading lists. I haven't done it, but because I used to read those books before anything like that would be around back in the early 90s. Mid 90s. I was already reading Stephen King books, so when I was a young teenager. But there's definitely a lot of books on everything that is connected and how it's connected, and so that's part of what I love about him. In addition to just the concepts and everything, really also one other thing I did mention earlier is that point that I made about getting things like CDs before they're released. If you wanted to, you could take that to mean some kind of time or alternate universe access to where the people there that were part of that corporation were had ways to get material, to get CDs or other objects that maybe weren't out to the public yet, or weren't released to the public yet. Of course, there's always the possibility of advanced releases here and there, but with King, I almost wouldn't be surprised if that was more of a paranormal reference. So, but yeah, I think that'll do it for today. Thank you all for listening. I'll be back on Saturday night, Sunday morning, with true paranormal stories on the web on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care, everyone.